So, gamers, let's talk about Barnes and Noble. So, Barnes and Noble is a fucking huge ass franchise that almost everyone knows about. It's kind of popularized because people are like Barnes and Nobles or Barnes and Noble and all that kind of bullshit, which for some reason pisses some people off. But we gotta talk about how they're basically dying because there's a really small market for people who want to go into a bookstore and buy a book versus buying it on Amazon or something like that. Amazon fucking bodies them with like Kindle and all that shit. And I think Barnes and Noble will realize this, but I don't think they're changing enough. Recently, they stated that they're going to double down on work on fucking in store sales rather than going online because they believe that there is still a high customer base for in store sales, and especially now during COVID, I think it is very 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 unlikely that you know that fucking Barnes and Noble does well. They're in a really rough situation overall, and I think I don't they're not close to bankruptcy, but I think they could easily approach that without very many issues. This is because the online presence and their inability to adapt, but also the books are becoming less and less wanted as movies, television, music, all these other types of art and entertainment get more and more popular and easily accessible. People don't want to read books as much. I know I didn't read a I never fucking read a book until I got into college. I didn't read a single one. And I feel like younger and younger generations are experiencing this more and more. And you still have people that like reading books. People are always gonna like reading books. That's just how it fucking goes. But there's always gonna be a shrinking base of people who don't want to read books because of the changing technologies. And I think there's still a chance for books to make a comeback, but I don't really think it's very likely. And that's not to say there won't be a market for books ever. Books are always going to be something that's desired by many people. And, if you fucking ever went to school, you have to read a book. So, there's always going to be books. But I think Barnes& and Noble is not, changing their business structure around what's happening with the market. You know, like, honestly, how many times have you guys read a book recently? Because I fucking barely read. If I do read, it's gonna be the Wall Street Journal, a fucking textbook, or a fucking YouTube comment. I'm not reading, a fucking novel for my enjoyment. And I think it's also coming with the fact that people are finding their time to be more and more valuable as more and more people are working more hours in the workforce to make more money, you know, and all that kind of shit. Because I do believe the average hours people are working have been increasing recently, and with that time of increasing, you're more likely to value your free time. If you have families, kids, significant others, all that shit, you're gonna spend that more valuable free time with them rather than by yourself reading a book. Now, what should Barnes and Noble do? It's pretty, it's not, it's pretty gray of what they should do. They either can more focus on the online market, but Amazon's already fucking dominating that shit, so they're kind of at a loss. They can focus on their in-store sales, which is, I believe, a bad idea. I think it's going to start to tank. Or they can just get smaller and kind of do a combination of both. That's their current plan. I don't think it's perfectly established. I think there's issues with, properly, properly spending money and being efficient as possible. Because recently they stated that they want to take, they want each store to tailor to what each community wants. So, if you have a store in Baltimore versus a store in Boston, they're going to, the store is going to sell different books because the preferences are going to be different. But that comes increased cost where you cannot buy books in bulk at the same cheap ass price. And also, they want to, they encourage having a small population of people in their stores at the time. They're like, yeah, what makes a bookstore so wonderful is that nobody's there. And I'm like, well, I guess, anytime I've been to a bookstore, which has only been like maybe 3 times, they're always empty. And it's nice to be in a quiet little area when you're looking at a book. But also, in reality, that's not a good business structure. If you want your business to have less customers and have less people in the store, then you're not going to succeed. Every business wants as many customers as possible usually. the exception being luxury brands, because the luxury brands get devalued as more people get them. But a majority of things, fucking Walmart, Target, Amazon, the more customers they have, the better. That just increases their profits because they're already making money, and that's something that Barnes and Noble should be questioning. You want to have many consumers usually, and in terms of supply and demand, it might switch up. Fucking basics supply and demand may say, hey, you don't want to produce too much, oversaturate the market, or have too many consumers to oversaturate the market. And that's true to some degree, but you don't want to shoot for very few consumers. And I think that's a big issue, especially with if you guys ever been in a Barnes and Noble, they're fucking huge. There's so many books there. They're fucking massive, and with them renting up that much space, they have to be making losses at that point. You have, like, let's say, I don't know, 10 to 15 people in a store at any given moment, and then you're taking out the size of a Walmart. I think it's pretty obvious that they're not making a profit, or probably not doing well, and this makes it so they can't market. Have you ever seen an advertisement for Barnes and Noble? Probably not, and that's kind of because it's a common household name. A lot of people already know them. But it also becomes with the issue of they probably can't afford it. They probably can't afford a lot of things. They need to likely cut back on the amount of people they have working for them, which caused its own slew of issues. But they did state that they do want to cut down, but they want to hire more expensive, more knowledgeable workers, and that is a good and bad thing. It's probably, I would assume that that's going to decrease their expenses overall. Because you're halving your total amount of, well, they said they want to half the total amount of workers, but they're probably going to increase the pay by like 50%, and then you're probably going to be cutting back around 25% of the revenue, or the expenses in terms of workers, which that's a pretty good thing, but that's not a great idea. And then the last point they said is, they know that a majority of their stores are going to not make profits, and I want them to learn from the bigger stores. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, literally, like, it doesn't make any goddamn sense that they want to have most of those stores not make profits. Their idea is, in the short run, they're not going to make profits. In the long run, they will make profits. But if you do so garbage in the short run, like, if I don't know what a majority is to them, but let's say like 80% of the stores don't make profits, then you have the issue of, is there a long run? Can you actually make this a sustainable business over a long period of time and not hide from bankruptcy? Like, these are huge issues that I think Barnes & Noble are overlooking. They have this, they're looking at it through rose-tinted glasses. Like, it doesn't really make any sense what they're doing. That's it. Thank you.